When people think of war, they imagine battlefields, soldiers clashing, cities under siege, and the deafening sound of gunfire. But the Cold War defied this traditional image. For over 4 decades, two global superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, engaged in a relentless struggle for dominance without declaring open war on each other. There were no massive tank battles between them, no formal invasions, no grand naval engagements. Yet, this conflict shaped the modern world, redrew borders, toppled governments, and held humanity on the brink of nuclear annihilation. So how did the Cold War become one of the most intense and consequential conflicts in history, without erupting into a direct shooting war between its two main players? Let us explore 5 key ways this war was fought: a war of spies, propaganda, economic battles, proxy wars, and nuclear brinkmanship. You might realize that some of the deadliest wars are the ones where the trigger is never pulled. Espionage and the invisible war of spies. The Cold War was, at its core, a shadow war, and nothing captured this more than the world of espionage. Both the United States and the Soviet Union built vast networks of spies, double agents, and informants. These operatives infiltrated government agencies, military commands, research centers, and even each other's intelligence organizations. The Central Intelligence Agency of the United States and the Soviet KGB became legendary for their cloak and dagger operations. They gathered secrets, sabotaged projects, and conducted psychological warfare on a global scale. Spy exchanges on isolated bridges, secret handoffs of classified documents, and coded messages hidden in plain sight became routine. One of the most famous espionage cases involved the Cambridge Five, a ring of British spies who passed sensitive information to the Soviets for years. In the United States, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were executed for allegedly passing nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union. Espionage was more than gathering information. It was a weapon to disrupt, deceive, and destabilize. Both sides feared what the other knew and raced to outmaneuver each other in a deadly game of secrets. And here is a chilling thought. Some of the most dangerous battles of the Cold War were fought in whispered conversations, coded letters, and shadowy meetings in dark alleys. Propaganda and the battle for hearts and minds. While spies fought in the shadows, both superpowers waged a very public war for global influence. A battle fought with words, images, and ideas. Propaganda became one of the most powerful weapons of the Cold War. The United States promoted the ideals of democracy, freedom, and capitalism. Through films, radio broadcasts, literature, and cultural exchanges, it portrayed itself as the defender of liberty and human rights. Voice of America broadcasts beamed messages into the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, offering news and ideas censored by communist governments. The Soviet Union countered with its vision of a workers' paradise. Soviet propaganda showcased the supposed successes of communism, industrial achievements, scientific milestones, and the promise of equality for all. It denounced the West as imperialist, corrupt, and exploitative. The space race became a key battlefield in this war of images. The Soviet launch of Sputnik in 1957 shocked the world and forced the United States to prove its technological superiority. The moon landing in 1969 became a triumph not just of science, but of ideology. Here is a striking reality. In the Cold War, words and symbols carried the power of weapons. Winning hearts and minds was as critical as winning battles. Economic warfare and the competition of systems beyond military threats and ideological battles, the Cold War was also a contest of economic power. The United States, leading the capitalist world, sought to demonstrate the strength of free markets, innovation, and private enterprise. The Soviet Union championed state-controlled economies and centralized planning. The Marshall Plan, launched by the United States after World War II, pumped billions of dollars into rebuilding Western Europe. This was not just charity, it was a strategic move to prevent the spread of communism by stabilizing economies and fostering prosperity. The Soviet Union responded with its own initiatives, like the Comecon, to bind its allies in Eastern Europe under Soviet economic influence. Trade embargoes, sanctions, and financial aid became weapons in a global economic chess game. The arms race itself, with its staggering costs, became a form of economic warfare. The Soviet Union poured massive resources into military buildup and space exploration, straining its economy to the breaking point. In the end, it was economic pressure that helped bring the Soviet Union to collapse. The failure of central planning, coupled with the unsustainable cost of the arms race, led to shortages, stagnation, and the eventual fall of the communist bloc. And here is a compelling truth. Sometimes wars are not won with armies but with markets, trade, and economic endurance. The Cold War was a battle of systems, and in the end, only one could sustain the cost. Proxy wars and conflicts, by other means, though the United States and the Soviet Union never fought each other directly. They clashed repeatedly through proxy wars, conflicts where each side backed opposing factions or governments in other countries. These wars allowed both superpowers to expand influence, test strategies, and bleed each other's resources without risking a direct confrontation. In Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and countless smaller conflicts in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East, the Cold War turned hot for local populations. The Korean War in the 1950s saw American-led United Nations forces fighting North Korean and Chinese troops backed by Soviet support. The Vietnam War dragged the United States into a brutal conflict against communist forces supported by the Soviet Union and China. In Afghanistan, the Soviet invasion in 1979 met fierce resistance from Mujahideen fighters supplied and trained by the United States and its allies. This proxy war drained Soviet resources and morale. Proxy wars served as brutal reminders that even without direct conflict between superpowers, the Cold War claimed millions of lives around the globe. These wars were not just regional disputes, they were extensions of the global ideological struggle. Here is a sobering fact. The Cold War may not have been a direct shooting war between the United States and the Soviet Union, but its battles spilled rivers of blood across the world. Nuclear deterrence and the doctrine of mutual assured destruction. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the Cold War was the nuclear arms race and the fragile balance it created. Both the United States and the Soviet Union built massive arsenals of nuclear weapons, each capable of wiping out human civilization many times over. This led to the doctrine of mutual assured destruction, the understanding that if one side launched a nuclear attack, the other would retaliate with equal or greater force, ensuring total annihilation on both sides. This horrifying logic prevented direct conflict. The cost of war was simply too high. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 brought the world closer than ever to nuclear war. For 13 tense days, the United States and the Soviet Union faced off over Soviet missiles placed in Cuba. The standoff ended with a negotiated withdrawal, but it served as a chilling reminder of how thin the line was between peace and global destruction. Nuclear deterrence created a strange kind of peace, a peace built on the fear of unimaginable war. It forced leaders to negotiate arms control agreements like the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And here is a haunting thought. Sometimes peace is maintained not by goodwill but by the unbearable price of war. The Cold War balanced on a knife edge of nuclear fear. And here is a lasting truth. Sometimes the most dangerous wars are the ones fought in silence, in boardrooms, in dark alleys, and in the hearts and minds of people across the world. If you found this look at the Cold War intriguing, be sure to watch our next video on the real Spartans. What history got wrong about them? See you there.